Okay, in this video I'm going to cover the non-calculus section of the SAT math test. There are 20 questions in this section, and you'll have 25 minutes to complete those 20 questions. And here they are the some formulas that we might use during the test. Area formula of many different shapes, volumes. Number of degrees in a circle is 360, radians is 2 pi. And a triangle has 180 degrees inside the triangle. Okay, let's go on to question 1. It says if x minus 1 over 3 equals k, and k itself is 3, what's the value of x? So we plug in 3 for k. You get x minus 1 over 3 equals 3. You times 3 on both sides, and you get x minus 1 equals 9. And when you add 1, you get x equals 10. Moving on to number 2, for I equals the square root of -1. It turns out you don't really need to know that unless you saw an I squared. Some problems you might see an I squared, and that will be -1, but we don't see it here. So for here you just expand, and you get 7 plus 3i minus 8 plus 9i. You combine like terms, 7 and -8 combine to -1. And these give you the 12i, so -1 plus 12i is the answer. Moving on to number 3. On Saturday afternoon, Armand sent M text messages each hour for 5 hours. So that's M times 5. And Tyrone sent P text messages for 4 hours. That's 4 times P for Tyrone's text messages. Which of the following represents the total? So we add those up. And we have option C. Kathy is a repair technician for a phone company. Each week she receives a batch of phones that need repairs. The number of phones that she has left to fix at the end of each day can be estimated with this equation. P equals 108 minus 23D. P is the number of phones left, and D is the number of days she has worked that week. What's the meaning of the value 108 in this equation? So the units have to be consistent, which means that if P has a unit of phones, then everything has a unit of phones. This has a unit of phones. So this 108 has a unit of phones. You might be wondering, what about this 23D? That too has a unit of phones, because the 23, the D has a unit of days, and the 23 has a unit of phones per day, which is why when you multiply those two, you do get a unit of phones. So the units are consistent. It's phones all throughout. So this 108 has units of phones. 108 days, that's not right. 108 phones, that could be right. 108 per hour, nope. 108 per day, nope. 108 phones. So the answer is B. She starts each week with 108 phones to fix, but that's the only one with the correct unit anyway. Moving on to number 5, which of the following is equivalent to the expression above? We'll distribute this negative sign, so we'll start from the left. X squared y minus 3y squared plus 5xy squared, and then negative and negative gives you plus x squared y minus 3xy squared and plus 3y squared. Okay, let's take a look at what we have. X squared y is here. There's another x squared y there. That's it. So we have 2 of those, 2 x squared y's. And let's see what else we have. We have y squared. There's minus 3y squared plus 3y squared. So those are gone. We're not going to have any y squared in our answer. So B is out. And D is out. They both mention y squared. Okay. And in fact we need 2x squared y, so the answer is C. But let's see what else we have. We have a 5xy squared minus away 3 of those, leaving you 2xy squared. So the answer is C. Moving on to number 6, h equals 3a plus 28.6. A pediatrician uses the model above to estimate the height h of a boy in inches in terms of the boy's age a in years between the ages of 2 and 5. Based on the model, what is the estimated increase in inches of the boy's height each year? each year, increase each year, that's slope. And the slope here is 3. If you think of this as y equals mx plus b, the coefficient of the input, that's your slope. This is the slope. So 3 is our slope, and the answer is 3. Moving on to number 7, it says m equals all this times p. The formula above gives the monthly payment m needed to pay off a loan of p dollars at r% annual interest over n months. Which of the following gives p in terms of m, r, and n? We're trying to solve for p. So what we notice is there's a fraction right next to p. So if someone gave you a question that said, this is a separate question as an example, if someone gave you m equals 2/7 p and asked you to solve for p in that situation, well, you would just multiply here by 7/2, and you'd multiply here by 7/2, and you'd be done, and that's your expression for p. It would be 7/2 times m. Well, we don't have 7/2, but what we do have is another fraction. So we multiply by the reciprocal of this fraction here. This fraction here has a reciprocal, which means this denominator will become the numerator. This numerator will become the denominator. We'll have a new fraction. And I'm not going to write the whole thing out, but this will sit on top. So you expect all this with the -1 to be on the numerator. And that's what we see here. And you expect all this stuff ending with that exponent n to be in the denominator. And that's what we see here. And that's what the m is. This is like our 7/2. It's not 7/2, but it is analogous to the example I gave. So the answer is B. Moving on to number 8. If a over b equals 2, what's the value of 4b over a? There are several ways to approach this problem. So let's take a look at what we can do. We can write down a over b equals 2. And you can times by b here and times by b here. And you would have a equals 2b. We're trying to get this. So let's keep working until we get that. What we can do is we can do a doubling of both sides. So finally you have 2a equals 4b. Okay, perfect. We're trying to get to this. This is our goal. We're almost there. We have a 4b. We just need to divide it by a. So let's do that. Let's divide that by a. And we have 4b over a, which was our goal. Divide by a. And that looks like 4b over a would simply be 2. So the answer is C. Moving on to number 9, we have a system of equations. What's the solution to the system of equations? Okay, let me write this out with x and y lined up nicely. So 3x plus 4y equals -23. And one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply all this, every term in here, multiply by -2. Why? Because I want the 2y to end up being -4y. Okay, so everything multiplied by -2, but we start with the x's. -x times -2, that's 2x. 2y times -2, that's our -4. We'll be right here. And -19 times -2, we have to know how to do 19 times 2, and you get 38. Now we have a system of equation that's lined up, ready for solving by elimination, because these 4y's and -4y will sum to 0, leaving you with just 5x equals, and 38 minus 23 is 15, divide by 5 and x equals 3. We don't have to go get y because we already have an answer. The answer is B. But if you plug this 3 back into either equation, either this one, or even this one if you like, you can get y equals -8. But we don't need to do that. The answer is B. Question 10, for the function g defined above, a is a constant and g of 4 is 8. What's the value of g of -4? So, now we don't have to find the value of a. G of 4 is a times 4 squared plus 24. And they're telling us that that comes out to 8. And this is 16a, so 16a plus 24 equals 8. Let's hold on to that for now. Let's not do anything with that. Let's just plug in g of -4. G of -4 would be a times -4 squared plus 24. This comes out to, now -4, when you square that number, you get positive 16. This is 16a plus 24. And 16a plus 24 is what, we already know what 16a plus 24 is, without having to calculate what a itself is. This is 8. So the answer is 8. Moving on to number 11. In the equations above, B and C represent the price per pound in dollars of beef and chicken respectively. B for beef, C for chicken. X weeks after July 1st during last summer. What was the price per pound of beef when it was equal to the price per pound of chicken? So when these two are equal, what's the value of B or C, because they're equal? So let's set them equal to each other. Let's do 2.35 plus 0.25x equals 1.75 plus 0.40x. Okay, now this is a lot of decimals. If you're comfortable working with decimals, you can just subtract 0.25x and keep going. But you can also multiply everything by 100, so you can work without any decimals. And this becomes 235 plus 25x equals 175 plus 40x. And from here we can subtract 25x on both sides, leaving you, and also subtract 175 on both sides. This is 60. 235 minus 175 is 60. And these are gone. And this one becomes 15x. So that means if you divide, and now if you divide by 15, you get x equals 4. So this occurs when x is 4 weeks after July 1st. But that's not the answer. And they don't have 4 in there. Besides, they're not asking you for weeks, they're asking you for dollars. So we're going to put 4 back into one of these equations. Either one is fine because that's when beef and chicken are equal. But putting it in here will get you beef. Furthermore, 0.25 times 4 is $1. So we have 2.35 plus 0.25 times 4. This portion is 1. So 2.35 plus 1 is 3.35. The answer is D. Let's just write down that's 3.35. Moving on to question 12. A line in the xy plane passes through the origin and has a slope of 1/7. Which of the following points lies on that line? Okay, if you pass through the origin, so if we think about y equals mx plus b, passing through the origin will give you a y-intercept of 0. So the b itself has to be 0. And the slope, well, we're given that, is 1/7. So our equation is y equals 1/7 x. That means if the y-coordinate is 1/7 the size of the x-coordinate, that's the answer. So x divided by 7. X divided by 7 should give you the y. So that means if we take the x-coordinate and divide that by 7, we should get the y. 0 divided by 7 produces 0, not this. 1 divided by 7 is 1/7, not regular 7. 7 divided by 7 is 1. But 14 divided by 7 is indeed 2. All we need is the x-coordinate to be 7 times as big as the y-coordinate. If you see the x-coordinate 7 times the size of the y-coordinate, that's the answer. And so we have 14, 2, where you can see that 2 is 1/7 times 14. It's the only one that fits. Moving on to number 13. It says if x is greater than 3, which of the following is equivalent to this? Okay. There is a longer way to do it, and then there's a shortcut, which I'll show you afterwards. So what we have to do is 1 over, then this is 1 over x plus 2, and this is 1 over x plus 3. Now the least common denominator between these two denominators is their product. So we're going to multiply everything here by x plus 2 and x plus 3. And of course do the identical step on the numerator. Now x plus 2, x plus 3, when you multiply by the first fraction here, the x plus 2's are gone, and so you're going to be left with x plus 3. Similarly for this term, when you multiply by both of these two, you're going to be left with x plus 2. And the numerator looks like x plus 2, x plus 3. So this is almost over because this numerator will expand out to x squared plus 5x plus 6, and this denominator has 2x plus 5. 2x plus 5. So the answer is B. Now remember, I told you there is a test-taking strategy that might help you with this. Instead of solving it the intended way, you could try a test value. Now I know it says x is greater than 3, so you're tempted not to plug in 0, but plugging in 0 is a fast way. Even though this applies when x is greater than 3, it applies for all x's that are not -2 or -3 or anything that would cause this denominator to go to 0 or anything like that. But plugging in 0 is perfectly fine, even though it tells you not to plug in 0 because it says x is greater than 3. But plugging in 0, let's see what we have. 1 over 1/2 plus 1/3, which is 1 over, now we have to add these two fractions to get 5/6, and you get 6/5 as the answer. Plugging in 0 into any of these, we're trying to get 6/5. This will give you 5/6, this will give you 6/5. Plugging in 0 here will give you 5, plugging in 0 here will give you 6. So the answer is B, by plugging in 0. Moving on to number 14. If 3x minus y equals 12, what's the value of 8 to the power of x over 2 to the power of y? Okay. If it can be determined at all. So we have to recognize that 8 is 2 cubed. If we know that, we can convert all of this using the base of 2. So we would have 8 to the x is 2 cubed to the x, and this denominator is 2 to the y. This keeps going to 2 to the power of 3x over 2 to the power of y. And for exponents with the same base, you subtract the exponents when you're dividing. So this becomes 2 to the 3x minus y. And ordinarily there's no way to proceed. However, 3x minus y itself has a value of 12. So this comes out to 2 to the 12. So the answer is A. And question 15. Ax plus 2 times bx plus 7 equals all this for all values of x. And a plus b is 8. What are two possible values for c? Okay, what we'll do is we'll expand this term by term. So you get ax times bx, which is abx squared, plus 7ax, plus 2bx, plus 14. And that's going to be equal to this 15x squared plus cx plus 14. Okay, and if these are equal for every value of x, that means everything has to match up appropriately. You see the plus 14 there? It matches up with that plus 14, so everything's good so far. There's an AB here, which is the coefficient of x squared, and that's 15. So AB equals 15. Furthermore, this middle part here, you can rewrite it as 7a plus 2b times x if you add the coefficients. And that's the same as c times x. So now we have another equation, which is that 7a plus 2b is c. Okay, so we have these two equations to work with. And we also have the value, the fact that a plus b is 8. Okay, that's another equation. I should have written that out too. A plus b equals 8. Now, two numbers that add up to 8, but they multiply to 15. So just based on these two equations, they have to be 3 and 5. But there's no, it's not specific that a must be 3 or b must be 5 or anything like that. So there are two cases. You could have a situation, case 1, where a is the 3 and b is the 5. But similarly, you can have another situation where a is 5 and b is 3. They would still sum to 8, they would still multiply to 15. So now, in case 1, where a is 3 and b is 5, the value of c is determined from 7a plus 2b. So one possible c is 7 times 3 plus 2 times 5. I'm using case 1 for my a and b values. This comes out to 10 and 21, which is 31. So the answer is D. But let's look at the other case, where you have A is 5, so A is 5, and B is 3. This is 35 plus 6, which is 41, and that's the other possible value of C. 31 and 41, so the answer is D. Moving on to number 16. If t is greater than 0 and t squared minus 4 is 0, what's the value of t? So there are several ways to do this. You could factor this using difference of squares. T plus 2, t minus 2 equals 0, and you would get t equals negative 2 or positive 2. But t is a positive number, so it cannot be this, so the value of t is 2. Another way to do this is t squared. You add 4 to both sides, you get t squared equals 4. Then you root both sides, you get t equals plus or minus root 4, which means plus or minus 2, which really means 2 or negative 2. But again, t is a positive number, so not this, just that. So the answer is 2. Question 17 says, a summer camp council wants to find a length x, this part here from A to E, in feet across a lake as represented in the sketch above. The lengths represented by all these AB, EB, BD, and CD were determined to be all these numbers. Let's fill those in. AB is 1800. Then you have EB is 1400, so EB is this part, 1400. That's from E just to B, not to D. We have BD, which is 700, so this is 700. Respectively means they're just in order. And CD is 800, so CD is here is 800. And they mentioned that these angles are the same. Angle AEB and CDB have the same measure. They're congruent angles. And these two are congruent also because they are vertical angles. What we have is similar triangles. Okay, what's the value of x? So we can use a proportion. X is over here, and it's similar to this CD portion. Let me just put this as the triple stripes. Okay, so we have the angle. Now we know which angles are congruent to which angles. X is between the single and the triple. 800 is between the single and the triple. So put that there. What else do we have? We can pick some other sides that we know. We have this and this. Okay, so let's use those. 700 is between the single and the double. And actually it should be on the other we got to make sure that these two that this x comes from, the numerators come from the same triangle. So x is from this left triangle, and 1400 between the single and the double is also from the left triangle. And the denominators are from the same triangle. That 800 and that 700 in the denominators, those come from the same triangle. Okay, and 700 is between the single and the double, just like 1400 is between the single and the double. So those line up, those are corresponding. And this is 2. 1400 divided by 700. It's a non-calculus section, but we have to know that that comes out to 2. And then you multiply by 800. And you're done. X is 1600. It's 1600 feet, but X is already in feet. So the answer that you would have to key in would be 1600. Moving on to number 18. According to the system of equations above, what's the value of x? Okay. We want to eliminate, and it's better to eliminate y. You could eliminate x, solve for y, come back and get x, which works. But how about we just eliminate y? That way we can get x instantly. So let's multiply everything in this line by negative 2. That will cause the y's to eliminate. Negative 2x, negative 2y, and negative 9 times negative 2 is positive 18. Okay. And then we write everything here. X plus 2y equals negative 25. This is by elimination. These two will go to nothing. Negative 2x plus x is negative x. And 18 minus 25 is negative 7. You divide by negative 1 and the answer is 7. Moving on to number 19. In a right triangle, one angle measures x and sine x is 4/5. What's cosine of 90 minus x? If you're given a right triangle, let's draw a right triangle. then one of the angles is x. Okay. Well, sine of x is 4/5. So sine is, let's recall what sine stands for. It's opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. But we have opposite over hypotenuse. Okay. 4/5. So this is 4 to 5. The ratio of these sides are 4 to 5. Okay. Cosine of 90 minus x. One of these angles is 90 minus x. Well, in a right triangle, these two angles, these two acute angles, are complementary. They will sum to 90 degrees because this angle is 90, and you need 90 more to get to 180. So they sum to 90 degrees. These are complementary. If one of them is x, the other one is 90 minus x. This particular angle is 90 minus x. And when you do the cosine of 90 minus x, you're going to get adjacent over hypotenuse. In other words, the sine of x is going to be the same as the cosine of the complementary angle. These two are equal. Sine of x equals cosine of 90 minus x. And if they're equal, then cosine of 90 minus x must also be 4/5, adjacent over hypotenuse. This 4 was the opposite side when we were referencing x, but it's the adjacent side when we're referencing the complementary angle. So the answer is 4/5. Moving on to number 20. If a equals 5√2 and 2a equals the square root of 2x, what's the value of x? Okay. 2a, we have an expression for 2a. If a is 5√2, then 2a would be 10√2. So this has to be 10√2. Root 2x is 10√2. What we'll do is we'll square everything. Square this side and square that side. When you square this, you just get 2x. The radical disappears, and this is 10 squared, which is 100, and root 2 squared, which is 2. And when you solve this, you divide by 2. You divide by 2. You can get x equals 100. So the answer is 100. And that's it for question 20. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to support the channel. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. And also, if you have any requests, any questions you want me to cover, any papers you want me to cover, please let me know in the comments, and I'll work on them as soon as I can. Thanks.